Rick Mount was always raised around a game of basketball, and he was great early, beating high school kids as a 4th grader. Once he got to high school himself, he became the best player in Indiana, as he scored 57 points in front of a crowd of 10,000 people. His fame even got him on the cover of Sports Illustrated. His best attribute was his pull-up jumper, as he had unlimited range, with the confidence to shoot every time he touched it. Rick had a legendary All-American career at Purdue, as he would even stay in Indiana as a pro, going to the Pacers with the #1 pick, signing a $1 million contract, and coming into the league with a lot of expectations. But Rick would never replicate his college success in the pros, whether it was due to being drafted to the wrong team, or maybe because his weaknesses were exposed at the highest level. After bouncing around a few teams, he would retire after a shoulder injury at the age of 28. Rick didn't have the pro career that most people hoped, but that doesn't take away from the impact he had on Indiana basketball. This is PC Hoops, and welcome to another episode of ABA Tales. Rick was born on January 5th, 1947 in Lebanon, Indiana. His father, Pete, was a former basketball player. Pete would cut out the bottoms of peanut cans so Rick could shoot tennis balls through them. Rick attended Lebanon High, where he made varsity as a freshman. Rick would eventually grow to 6'4", as his quick release was hard to block. He averaged 33 points as a junior, but his first big moment came against Crawfordsville High. This game was held at Hinkle Fieldhouse with 10,000 people in attendance. Rick scored 57 points in that game as the team sold enough tickets to buy a bus. He averaged 33 points as a senior as in the state tournament game at Logansport. Rick dropped 47 points, including 20 in the 4th quarter. After a dominant senior year, Rick was named a first-team parade All-American and Indiana's Mr. Basketball. He had become a local celebrity, as he even had a sign honoring him posted on I-65. On February 14, 1966, he caught the attention of Sports Illustrated, who came from New York all the way to Indiana to do a cover story on him. He was annoyed that he was posed in front of a barn, as he was a town kid with no interest in farming. But this was historic, as Rick was the first high school basketball player to be featured on the cover of Sports Illustrated, so he was a pretty big deal around this time. After scoring 2,595 points in high school, Rick had college offers from all over the country, as John Wooden, a coach who rarely traveled, went to Indiana to recruit Rick. But in the end, Rick would stay home and commit to Purdue. He joined the Boilermakers team that featured 2 great juniors in Bill Keller and Herm Gilliam. Rick would lead their offensive attack, which was top 25 in the country. The only problem was that they couldn't play any defense. They had a decent 15-9 record, but there was definitely room for improvement. Rick's elite shooting was on display as he led the Big Ten in scoring, making the All-Big Ten first team, averaging 29 points and 3 rebounds on 44% shooting. Purdue really hit their stride in 1968, as they had the highest scoring offense in the nation, led by Rick. He led the nation in shot attempts and free throw attempts, finishing second in scoring behind Pete Maravich. He had his most famous college game against Iowa, where he dropped 61 points, as later research found that he would have had 74 points with a 3-point line, as he made 13 shots from that range. The Boilermakers were on fire this year, going 13-1 in conference play to win the Big Ten, securing the program's first ever tournament appearance. Rick was nationally recognized for his efforts, making the first team All-America, along with 2 other M's in Pete Maravich and Calvin Murphy. Rick averaged 33 points and 3 rebounds on 52% shooting. Purdue faced Miami of Ohio in their first tournament game, as Rick dropped 32 points on 60% shooting in a 20-point win. Rick had a bad shooting night against Marquette, but he had the ball with the score tied with 2 seconds left, with a chance to send Purdue to the Final Four.
In the Mid-East Regional Final, Purdue was tied with Marquette, and there was no question who would take the final shot.
Obviously, the ball's going to end up in Rick's hands, and that's who it is that you want to shoot it.
I go off to the right, guy goes under the pick, I come out and get it, I go off to the right.
Routine shot for Rick. Off the dribble, clean as can be.
It's a three-pointer, if you're talking about three-pointers now. Hit nothing but net with 1 second to go.
The Final Four was against Charlie Scott in North Carolina. Rick had another great performance, dropping 36 points, 4 rebounds, and 3 assists on 50% shooting in the blowout win. But they would have a tough time with Kareem and UCLA in the national championship.
In the national championship, Mount and the Boilermakers faced a familiar foe. 2-time defending champion UCLA, coached by former Purdue great John Wooden.
First 2 shots I hit. I concentrated so much, I never heard the crowd. And all of a sudden, I can hear the crowd. I don't know why. I can hear the crowd. And I missed my next 14 shots.
Rick dropped 28 points, but he shot 12 for 36 as Kareem had a dominant performance with 37 points and 20 rebounds. Purdue was blown out, but this was still a legendary tournament run for the program. Bill and Herm both left to go pro, as Rick was encouraged to shoot even more. Their offense dropped off a little as expected, but they were still a good team. They finished 11-3 in the Big Ten, but Iowa, led by John Johnson, went 14-0 in the conference. Rick had another All-American season, averaging 35 points and 2.5 rebounds on 49% shooting. There were two choices in the United States in terms of pro basketball, but there was no doubt that Rick would choose the ABA because it had a 3-point shot, and he could sign with the defending champion Indiana Pacers, letting him stay in Indiana. The $1.5 million contract was a great motivator as well, as Rick now is expected to be a key part of a potential dynasty in Indiana. But in regards to his contract, the ABA had a history of payment issues, as Rick later said that he only got about $250,000 of that contract over his whole career. Once the NBA execs found out that he had signed to play in the ABA, Rick wouldn't be drafted until the 8th round by the Lakers. But once the season started, it didn't look like he'd see the court that much. The Pacers were a really deep team, as Roger Brown, Warren Jabali, and Freddie Lewis all occupied the wing positions. Rick didn't have the handle to play the point, or the athletic ability to play the forward, so he was stuck on the bench as a rookie. When he did get in, he provided a nice scoring punch. He dropped 24 points on January 19th against Utah, and he also had his season high on March 3rd against Minnesota, with 26 points, 7 rebounds, and 4 assists on 10 of 17 shooting. Rick had 16 games with double figures, but he didn't really play enough minutes to get into a rhythm, so he shot poorly from the field. The MVP Mel Daniels led the Pacers to a 58-26 record. Rick averaged 7 points, 1 rebound, and 1.5 assists, as he had a small role in their semifinal sweep of Memphis. The Stars were next in the division finals, as Rick dropped 13 in Game 3 and 17 in Game 4, but the Pacers lost in Game 7. Rick was going through a lot of things during this time, as he was tired of the constant traveling, as his sleep schedule was poor. He was also in the doghouse with his coach Slick Leonard. Once he saw that Rick wasn't a good defender, and he couldn't create his own shot, he was benched. The management wanted Slick to at least play the local kid at home, but he wouldn't budge. But lo and behold, Rick would have a bigger role in 1971. Warren Jabali had been traded, so Rick was given a lot more minutes, even making 50 starts. He was averaging 18 points and 4 assists on 37% from 3 in the first month and a half. His passing was an underrated part of his game, as he had 20 games with at least 5 assists. He dropped the season-high 30 points and 7 assists on 13 of 21 shooting on November 17th against Utah. Indiana was a balanced team, as Rick was one of 6 double-digit scorers. He was also one of the league's best shooters from distance, with a near 32% clip. The Pacers' 47-37 record secured them a semifinal matchup with the Rockets. In his much-improved season, Rick averaged 14 points, 2 rebounds, and 3 assists, as he dropped 8 points a game in the semifinals, but he shot 36% from 3 in a 7-game series win for Indiana. In the division finals against Utah, he had similar production, and the Pacers snuck past them in Game 7 to make another trip to the finals, facing the New York Nets. Rick averaged 13 points in Games 2 through 5 to help the Pacers win the series in 6, giving Rick his first championship. Rick would finally leave Indiana as he was traded to the Colonels in the offseason. Darryl Carrier had retired, and they needed someone to replace his scoring. Rick was a starter at the 2, and he would build on last year's performance. He dropped 30 points, 3 rebounds, and 3 assists in the 3rd game of the season. He also put up 25 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, and 4 steals on January 3rd against his former team. Rick had 14 games with at least 20 points and 13 games with at least 5 assists. The Colonels' dominant front court carried them to a 56-28 record, as Rick averaged 15 points, 2.5 rebounds, and 3 assists on a career-high 46% shooting. In the semifinals against Virginia, he averaged 20 points on 52% shooting, making 3 of his 5 3-pointers in a gentleman's sweep. The Cougars were next in the division final, as Rick dropped 31 points in Game 1 and 29 in Game 2, as both teams split them. He put up 25 points and 6 assists in Game 5, but he had been in the shooting slump the last couple games. Rick shot 6 for 20 in Game 7, when the Colonels were able to win by double digits, booking a finals matchup against Rick's former team. But he couldn't find his shot in this series, shooting 32% and 14% from 3 in Games 1 through 6. Rick dropped 16 in Game 7, making all 3 of his 3-pointers, but the Colonels lost at home to lose the series. Rick would be on the move again in 1973, as he was traded mid-season to the Utah Stars, but he would be back on the bench, sitting behind Ron Boone, Johnny Newman, and Glenn Combs. He was a solid bench scorer, plus he was one of the more accurate 3-point shooters on the team. Rick had an impressive performance on March 9th versus Virginia, with 21 points on 10 of 10 shooting. The Stars' elite defense led them to a 51-33 record, as Rick averaged 8 points, 1 rebound, and 1.5 assists. Rick dropped 16 in Games 1 and 2 of the semifinals against San Diego, but he was quiet after that, as the Stars beat the Qs in 6 games. The Pacers were their opponent in division finals, as Rick missed the first 2 games, but he shot 44% from 3 in games 4 through 7 to help the Stars beat the Pacers. They faced Dr. J and the Nets in the finals, as he had his best performance in game 3 with 19 points and 3 rebounds, but the Stars were easily beaten in 5 games. Rick was traded yet again in the offseason, as he, Julius Key, and coach Joe Mulaney were sent to the Memphis Sounds for Randy Denton. Some of his former Pacers teammates were on the team, but they were both past their primes. Chuck Williams, George Carter, and Stu Johnson were the main pieces on the team. But Rick finally had something he'd been looking for his entire career, a major opportunity. With Memphis not really competing for anything, Rick was given his biggest green light since the Purdue days. He dropped 25 in the second game of the season, followed by 27 points, 4 rebounds, and 5 assists on 4-5 from 3 2 games later. Rick had his best stretch as a pro in the month of November, averaging 21 points and making 52% of his threes. But Rick would dislocate his shoulder on November 24th against the Spirits. He tried to come back after a month, but he had to alter his shooting form, plus the pain was too much to deal with, so he decided to retire at 28 years old. Rick was shooting 43% from 3 at the time of his injury, as the timing was unfortunate, with him finally having a little freedom to play his game. In his last pro season, he averaged 17 points, 2 rebounds, 3 assists, and a steal. After he turned down an invitation to play for the Rockets in 1978, Rick was done for good. He held a lot of resentment towards Slick Leonard for ruining his career, even refusing to accept an invitation to a ceremony honoring the 50 best players in Indiana history, all because Slick would be there. He also felt slighted by Purdue after they gave away his number 10 to another player while his son was attending the school. Because of this, he didn't bother to complete the last 10 credits of his degree, which hurt him when he went to apply for high school head coaching jobs. Rick was inducted to the Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame in 1992, and most recently gave an interview to the Indy Star in 2016 about his public perception. Rick Mount was someone who had it all as a teenager, soaking in the adulation of all of Lebanon. After becoming the best player in Indiana, he committed to Purdue, where he had a legendary career. It seemed like Rick would never leave the state, as he was selected with the first pick in the ABA draft by his hometown Pacers. He was given a $1 million contract, and now the expectations were high. To be fair, Rick would have thrived on any other team besides the Pacers, as they were already deep at the 2 guard, so there wasn't much opportunity to play. However, Rick's game was one-dimensional, and he lacked the athleticism to stand out. Plus, he didn't want to do little things like passing, rebounding, and defending. When he finally got an opportunity to play his game in Memphis, a shoulder injury was the last straw and he called it quits. Rick may not have had the pro career he wanted, but there's no denying the impact he had on Purdue and the state of Indiana as a whole. So thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate y'all. It was that wave of those guards that just take a whole bunch of shots and are scoring a whole bunch of points. But the problem is, when you get to the league, the system are not going to cater to you like that. Like most times, they need guys that can do everything, not just a guy that's going to shoot 30 times. Like if he was on a team like Memphis in the beginning and he had a chance to really play and then maybe learn how to deal with the defense, maybe he would have got better. Maybe he would have really worked on his handle, if he really got a chance to really be out there and figure out what to do, when they're game planning against you. You know what I mean? Like try to get better. I don't know. He was just bound to go to the Pacers because he was from Indiana and they wanted him to stay in Indiana for like marketing purposes, of course. Trying to sell some tickets, because like why would they not want to see the local celebrity play professional basketball in their home state? You know what I mean? He was an excellent shooter, man. The dude could shoot the leather off the ball, man. He could shoot the mess out of the ball, man. He had to add more to his game, I mean, when he was able to play, he was a reliable shooter. I can't lie, he was a great shooter. So he was able to fill a role. So, it's not like he was a total bust or something like that. It was a lot of circumstances that led to that, Thank you. I really appreciate y'all. Be safe, stay on the grind. I'm out. Peace.